Welcome to Westchester Jewish Community Services. As a leading agency in providing a comprehensive spectrum of human services, we have been helping people since 1943. We serve all people in Westchester County, regardless of age, income, or ethnicity. We provide a wide variety of essential and dynamic services that make a difference in people's lives. Children, teens, adults, and senior citizens are served by our network of programs located throughout the county. When people come to us for assistance, they become part of the WJCS family. Our highly trained and skilled staff focus on you and your family and are committed to becoming your partner in finding solutions. For more than half a century, we have been connecting people to services that help them overcome mental, physical, or emotional challenges. WJCS is here in your community when you need us.
Welcome to the Ways We Care of WJCS. I'm Angela Nally, Coordinator of Community Relations. WJCS is Westchester's leading mental health, social service, developmental disabilities, and healthcare agency serving people who live and work in Westchester County. For the past 7 years, WJCS's Educational Institute has conducted an annual professional development conference sponsored by the Kurz Foundation. This year's 8th annual Edith Kurz Conference, scheduled for Thursday, November 2nd at Reed Castle at Manhattanville College in Purchase, will focus on the Early Childhood Challenge, connecting the family, the community, and the clinician. The conference will look at new developments in early childhood theory, as well as explore issues such as early intervention programs and understanding infant communication and parent-child interactions. There will be keynote speakers, a panel discussion, and workshops. We have invited several of the experts who will be sharing their research and experience at the conference to speak with us this evening. I'd like to introduce my guests, John Alterman, Director of WJCS's Educational Institute and Director of Training. Welcome, John.
Thank you.
And we have two professionals in the field of early childhood joining us who will serve as panelists in the Kurz Conference. They are Rachel Grob, Director of Policy Analysis and Coordinator of Yonkers Early Childhood Initiative. Welcome, Rachel.
Thanks.
And Patrice Cuddy, Director of WJCS's Parent-Child Home Program. Thanks, Patrice.
I'm glad to be here.
Thank you all for appearing on today's program. I'd like to speak first with John. Would you tell our viewers about the Educational Institute and the Edith Kurz Conference?
The Educational Institute has been a program of WJCS for 20-plus years, I would say. I'm relatively new to it, last 4 or 5 years, I guess. And we offer a whole series of things, courses, seminars, clinical conferences, both for the community and for our own WJCS staff. The Kurz Conference this is our 8th Kurz Conference. Edith Kurz was a clinician and administrator here at WJCS for many years, and even after her retirement has continued to be of service to us by using the Kurz Family Foundation to help fund some of our offerings and, in fact, other things that go on in the Kurz Conference besides this conference. So this is, again, the 8th year that we've been doing this.
Okay. Why was the topic of early childhood chosen for this year's conference?
Well, I think there are a few reasons. Certainly one of them is that we're embarking on a new project this year. We're opening a daycare center in Yonkers. I know you're going to hear more about that later, but this is a new venture for us, but certainly an early childhood thing, and we wanted to certainly take note of that. Secondly, the county, there's been a big push in the county, Westchester County this year, in early childhood. There's an initiative going on, and we wanted to certainly be a part of that because we've been part of planning groups, et cetera, during the course of this. And then I think a very important aspect of it is that WJCS, although we've had programs for years that have served young children, Patrice's program, Parent-Child Home Program, and Different Start are two that come to mind, I don't think people have thought of us as much as a clinical agency that works with young children, and in fact we do that and want to do more of that, and so this is a way of highlighting that part of our services.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And who may attend the conference?
Well, I think probably the people that will be the most interested in it would be people who work with early young children, either as clinicians or in daycare centers or teachers. I think even parents could come. In fact, some of the early registrations, in fact, have been parents because we're offering a wide range of things, both clinical things and workshops on some very different kinds of topics.
So it is open to the general public?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And if you would tell us who the keynote speakers are and what they'll speak to.
The first keynoter will be Jerlene Daniel, Dr. Jerlene Daniel. She's from the University of Pittsburgh. She has a long record of work in this area. I have not heard her speak, but many people who are in the field and have heard her say she's wonderful. She's going to be speaking on empowerment. She has a whole theory that she's developed around how to work with young children in a sort of an integrative approach to their development. And then she'll be participating also in the panel discussion, and she's giving a workshop in the afternoon. Mm-hmm. And then after lunch we have a second keynote, and that'll be Ann Boyer, who's the Executive Director of the Westchester County Youth Bureau, who's going to be talking about this initiative that I referred to before, and exactly what that's going to mean for the county and for agencies and families that live in the county.
Okay. Okay, I'd like to turn now to Patrice Cuddy, who's the Director of WJCS's Parent-Child Home Program, and that is an early literacy program. And we're talking about this new focus in early childhood and these new collaborative efforts among both private and public organizations and agencies like WJCS. Could you tell us more about the focus on early childhood?
Sure. Having been in the field of early childhood for over 25 years, I'm very excited the fact that we're having a conference on early childhood. Those of us who've been in the field for many years really have been part of and really know that the early years are really very important, particularly in terms of learning. We also know that parents deserve and need the support and resources necessary to really nurture their children. So the fact that we're entering into this conference on early childhood, and certainly WJCS has been active, as you said before, in being a forerunner in many things, but particularly also in the early childhood, the Parent-Child Home Program, which we'll speak about later, is celebrating their 28th year already. So we've been around for a long time, so it's pretty exciting that we're focusing on the early childhood.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And why is it important to focus on that 0 to 6 age bracket particularly?
Well, I think one of the, and probably Rachel would agree with this, is that probably for lots of reasons, and I think one of the reasons why we're really looking at early childhood, and it's not just us at our agency, it's really all over the county, the state, federal initiatives, is because of the research. And most importantly, I think the recent brain research in terms of how children learn has really put on the map the importance of early childhood and that development. Finances is a big reason. We know that if we put money in prevention, it's going to pay off in the long run. So I think finances has a big piece of that. And I don't know, Rachel, what other kinds of things would you imagine that we're really focusing on early childhood?
Well, I think, as you said, we know how important from the research those years are, and yet our system of care and of education in this country has generally focused on children when they reach school age. And I think there's a lot of re-education going on in the professional community and in the layperson community among parents and at all the levels that you mentioned to get the point across to folks who may not see it that way, that those first 3 years, first 5 years are really critically important even though children haven't entered into a formal education system. It's not the case that they come with a set intelligence and that's going to be put into work when they get to school. Their brain is actually being structured by the environment and the care that they get when they're young.
And the advance in scientific research and technology, we're really able to see very graphically the brain growth that comes from with stimulation. And so I think that has inspired all of us to get on that. And as Rachel had said, I think the other piece is early childhood professionals have become more savvy to advocacy, that they're really coming up in the front there and talking about what their experiences are, what they've noticed, what they've seen. So I think that's part of the whole piece of early childhood coming to the forefront.
Well, when you talk about that and you talk about the advocacy, and that kind of ties us into what I'd like to shed some light on in terms of this new integrated services that John mentioned, and that is really the buzzword these days in terms of what's going on at the county level, from the government down to agencies like WJCS. And Rachel's initiative as well. Maybe you could give us a little
Yeah,
information
you
about
know,
that.
you talk about buzzwords, and there's a million acronyms and norms and words that come up that we're like, all right, what does that mean? Well, integrated services is a word that's been going around a lot in the last year, and really what it is, it's a plan. It's a comprehensive plan that is including cross-service kinds of programs that start to begin to develop a plan for where we want to head. So for instance, if we were looking at our objective is to have healthy young children, what needs to come in to talking about how to have healthy children? And so it needs to be cross-section. It isn't just the education people. It isn't just the health people or the health department. It isn't just housing. It isn't just child care. So what the county has done is really taken, and Ann Boyer will be speaking at length about this and the initiatives that are happening as Westchester has become a pilot for integrated services, is that we need to begin to think about what goes into making a healthy child. So that's a whole inclusion of that, of parents, family, relatives, schools, churches, communities, government, housing, all kinds of things that will come in. So what happens is you all come to the table and you talk about, okay, let's look at, just say that we're talking about early childhood right now. So we say, all right, so what's needed? What's the needs assessment going on? What is needed? What do we have? Where are we going? What's the research? What kinds of things are happening? And you plan and look at a needs assessment. The second step that you might enter into is, okay, how are we going to accomplish it? What services are we going to provide to accomplish what our criteria is, what our goals are, what our objectives are? And then we need to really bring in community mobilization, because without those three components, it's not going to happen. And so we bring in all people together to try to move forward the agenda of, say, healthy children. Yeah.
I'd like to talk to Rachel a little bit more about that specifically. She is the coordinator of the Yonkers Early Childhood Initiative. Rachel, in that framework, can you give us an idea of what that initiative is about?
Yeah, I think it follows perfectly from what Patrice was just saying about the integrated planning approach. In Yonkers, a public-private partnership has formed a community collaborative called the Early Childhood Initiative to try to promote the health and well-being of young children, really from the prenatal period through age 5 or 6. It's a very exciting process precisely because it does bring to the table all of the parties that Patrice mentioned, the child care people, the health care people, the community advocates, residents who live in the city and are concerned about early childhood, the school district, the city itself, the providers such as WJCS and the Andrus Children's Center where I work. It's bringing everybody around the table to take a look at what's going on in Yonkers specifically, although we certainly articulate back with the county and with the state on certain touchstones for measuring where children are at. And we help each other to reaffirm a commitment to making Yonkers a place where children are born healthy and where they're nurtured by their families and the community so that they can maintain that good health, so that they're prepared to learn when they enter school, and so that they can really achieve the developmental potential that is optimal.
Mm-hmm. And the specific components of the initiative, can you tell us a little bit more about those components?
Sure. We have worked from the vision that I just recited here to develop a set of goals for our first 2 years, and they have been around some of the basics that you were just talking about, Patrice. Certainly a focus on needs assessment so that we can have a sense of how well children in Yonkers are doing. We're about to publish a data book that pulls together all that information on learning, on health, on nurturance, on having basic needs for food and housing and economic stability met. And we're hoping that that will really serve as a baseline for us going forward. We have focused on working with our early childhood professionals who will be attending WJCS's CURS conference and who have been engaged more locally in Yonkers to through a leadership symposium forum, learn more about the brain research on early childhood, to go into sort of a retreat format where we could really focus on best practices in the field and where we want to take those, as well as kind of getting to know each other better and learning what everyone's doing that we can all benefit from.
I think that's a big part that you're talking about, trying to bring people together so that we could tap each other's resources, do a little shared staff development, support us in our journeys of trying to do things, because often it can be a lonely job out there. I mean, if you think of some of the people who may be working in a child care center in their long hours, hard hours, and they're there. So an approach to an integrated plan helps support those individual workers, the family as well.
Absolutely. And it's just been incredible in Yonkers to see how providers and folks who work with young children and their families have, with such enthusiasm, come together in this collaborative forum to really go beyond what any one program can provide. I mean, that's what you were talking about, Patrice said. It's going to be more than a parenting education program. It's going to be more than preschool. It's going to be more than the healthcare clinic. It's going to be more than the mental health clinic. It really takes all of us stepping outside of what our prescribed roles in our home agencies are to look at the whole picture for children. And I think one of the major accomplishments of the Yonkers Early Childhood Initiative has been to provide a forum where that could happen, and the response from all of the participants has just been terrific.
Who beyond WJCS is a member of this initiative in Yonkers?
Many, many, and I tremble to say them because I know I'll forget some important folks. The Antris Children's Center, where I work, has taken the lead in coordinating this piece of it with some funding in the shape of a planning grant from the Surdna Foundation. And around the table is certainly the city itself, the mayor's office, which has started a broader health initiative in Yonkers, of which the Early Childhood Initiative is a part. The healthcare folks, the Riverside Health System, which encompasses two of Yonkers' 3 hospitals, and the other hospital, St. Joseph's, is very active as well. Individual providers from the medical community, the public providers, the Department of Health, the Department of Social Services, community mental health, the school district, the Center for Preventive Psychiatry, that's very active in Yonkers, the Child Care Council of Westchester, as well as many of the wonderful child care centers that we have.
I think you did mention to me there's about 60 organizations. I didn't expect you to name them all, but just to kind of touch upon and give us an idea of really what this collaboration is all about. We also talked about the Yonkers Family Day. And it's a really great day and a really neat thing. I'd like to give you an opportunity to tell our viewers about that and when it is and who can come.
Thanks. It's actually a wonderful complement to the CURS conference, which will be on November 2nd of this year, and the Family Day in Yonkers, which is open to all children and families, although it emerges from the work of the Yonkers Early Childhood Initiative, will be on the following Saturday, November 4th. So when we were talking about planning for these 2 events, the kind of serendipitous placement of them together was very exciting, since the CURS conference will focus on professionals and families as well, but it's more of a research-based, presentation-based day. Family Day in Yonkers is a celebration and recognition of the hard and wonderful and challenging work that parents do with their children every day. It's a festive occasion with many opportunities for parents and their children to do artwork together, to learn how to cook together, to learn how to make music together. There will be play shops of many kinds where parents and children can learn to do some simple things on the computer together, where they can learn some basic sign language together, and there will also be a range of performers ranging from the Westchester Disabled in Action singers to the Latino and Latinas dancers and other local talent. So it should be quite a wonderful, exciting day. It's at no cost to families. You can't spend money at Family Day, even if you try. It's really a gift in return to the parents of Yonkers for the work that they do, raising the next generation of residents in our city.
And I think you've got some targeted workshops possibly as well, and as part of the format.
Right. We're actually calling them play shops this year because we want to get across the idea that this is not a sit down and have to make your child be quiet. This is a forum where parents are meant to be with their children and get support from the community to learn how to be with their child in even more creative ways than perhaps they've discovered heretofore. So, for example, we'll be having a play shop on how to cook with your children. We know that supper time can be stressful, particularly perhaps for working parents who may be coming home and collecting their child from childcare and having to get dinner on the table while they reconnect with their child after the long day. And wouldn't it be great if they could incorporate their child into the cooking activity so it becomes something fun that they do together rather than should I be with my child or should I get dinner on the table so my child can eat?
It's a great day
you
of
know?
spending time with your children and playing and learning together,
Exactly.
and the play and the learning piece comes very much together. Rachel, I was just curious, I know a lot of the agencies will also be there that day who
That's
serve
right.
the community. Will they have like staff there or resources that they have to distribute to people who may be interested in some of the services?
Certainly. I know WJCS is committed to be there, as are many other providers of services. And again, what we're shooting for is an interactive forum. So, for example, all of the providers of parenting education, mental health, family support services will be in one area of the Museum Middle School on Warburton Avenue, which is where the event will be held. And we will have information about programs and follow-up that parents can do, but we will also have sort of the expert is in on site, so maybe a face painter would come over and engage a 3-year-old painting on her cheek while mom could ask, what do I do when my child has a tantrum in the grocery store? How do I get my baby to sleep through the night? We really want to provide the support on site as well as giving folks things they can take back with them and reference later so they can follow up with services. And last year that was very, very successful. We had just wonderful stories about the conversations that took place and the fun that the children had, kind of being engaged by the volunteers while the parents talked to other staff of the day.
Got what they needed to. It sounds like a wonderful
Yeah,
day.
great.
I'd like to give Patrice an opportunity to talk now about some of the initiatives, one in particular that you and I spoke about in New Rochelle, the Village Team that the Parent-Child Home Program is involved with.
Sure.
It's not unlike the Yonkers
Yes,
initiative.
in fact, Patrice and I have
Just
spoken
chatting about
often
that.
Yeah.
about exactly that.
Yeah. I think as we begin to look at how we're working collectively and collaboratively, it takes on many, many different forms throughout the county and in different communities. In New Rochelle specifically, New Rochelle is a community where WJCS has many services it provides. It provides the Parent-Child Home Program. We have a mental health clinic there. Our Linkages program is there. We have a 2-day-a-week domestic violence community service worker there. So we, in addition to the rest of the programs that WJCS offers, available to the community at large throughout the county, actually. And the Village Team had started, well, I'd like to give a little history because it shows how things can snowball and teamwork really begins. Sound Shore Medical Center, I guess in the fall of '98, was doing some of their data collection, and they noticed a tremendous, or not, an increase of inflicted wounds through the emergency room coming in, and that seemed to be increasing, and they were very concerned. Now, a hospital typically can just clean that up, clear it up, and send them on the way. But in a preventative way, they wanted to bring together some community members to say, you know, hey, this is what we're seeing in the community, and they brought together the Guidance Center in New Rochelle and the school district, and they began to talk about, you know, what's happening in the community. At the same time, the county was making an initiative to pull together community people to solve their problems. And so with their support, the Village Team was formed. Now, the Village Team currently now is over 40 agencies who will participate on this team. And its focus is positive youth development, and that's children from 0 to 21. And it's taken the form of coming together all together, and how can we plan the best for our youth. As the community, New Rochelle cares about their youth. So how this has taken off is that we've divided into groups of subcommittees, and each subcommittee is meeting separately as well as generally coming together and trying to come up with doing a needs assessment in that area, coming up with strategies for planning, and involving and motivating the whole community together. So if we look at what's WJCS's involvement, certainly we're involved in the Domestic Violence Committee. And some of the initiatives that have come out of that was, and the other members, My Sister's Place is there, WJCS is there, the hospital is there, the guidance center is there on that committee. They have moved forward in really great programming where the entire Southern Shore staff is trained in domestic violence, not only the emergency room, but the physicians and so forth. So they're looking for a big education in domestic violence. And that has come through various initiatives in seeking funding as a group. In the Parent-Child Home, in the 0 to 6 subcommittee, of which I chair, on that committee would be the health department, the school, parents, PTA, mental health agencies, WIC, and moving forward and making initiatives that serve the 0 to 6 community as well.
I am so sorry to say that we are running short of time. It's been a wonderful discussion, and I want to thank my guests for joining me this evening. If you'd like more information about the CURS conference, please call John Alterman at 949-7699, extension 374. And if you'd like to know more about the Family Day, please call Rachel Grob at 965-3883. Thank you for viewing. Welcome back to the Ways We Care of WJCS. I'm Angela Nally, Coordinator of Community Relations. WJCS is funded by UJA Federation, United Way, corporations, foundations, and individuals. We've been talking about this year's 8th annual Edith Kurz Conference, conducted by WJCS's Educational Institute, which will focus on the Early Childhood Challenge, connecting the family, the community, and the clinician. The conference will be held at Manhattanville College in Purchase on November 2nd and will include appearances by both County Executive Andrew Spano and his wife Brenda Spano. To continue our discussion, I'd like to introduce my guests, all of whom will be leading workshops at the conference. I'm delighted to have join us this evening Dr. Megan Flynn, who is Director of WJCS's Kids in Community Schools program, or KICS program. Welcome, Megan.
Thank you.
We also have Kathleen Marquardt, who is the director of our new Family Center. Welcome, Kathy.
Thank you.
And her workshop co-facilitator, Jennifer Spitz, who is coordinator of the Life Advancement Program at St. Vincent's Hospital. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. Megan will be co-leading the workshop entitled All About Young Kids, Questions and Answers with 2 experienced clinicians. That's quite a mouthful. Megan, when you and I spoke about your workshop, you told me that there has been an increase in the concern about early childhood mental health issues in the community of late. Why the increased concern, and what are some of those mental health issues?
I think there's an increased concern and an increased understanding, knowledge, and sensitivity to the mental health needs of young children and youth in general. And I think some of that comes obviously because of some of the increase in violence that we've seen, although there have been decreases in other areas. Obviously, it's in the news and the media. Concern regarding the impact that environments have on children and a better understanding of the fact that they do, and an increased understanding of the factors that we know have a positive impact on children. And they're not ones, although our research now substantiates what those areas are, they're sort of the common sense kind of things that I think most people have known for a very, very long time. And we just have more and more information that clearly points to the need for nurturing and supportive adults and community, the need for us to be protective of our children in regard to areas that are violence, for example, and that can include domestic violence, street violence, the need for children to have opportunities both educationally as well as in regard to broader issues of well-being that have to do with their emotional welfare as well as their social welfare needs to be productive and to have support and opportunities to do that. So there are a lot of things that are common sense, that we know, and we have lots to support the fact that we can help to support families in providing and ensuring that for their children.
When we talked a great deal about these factors and how they impact a child's normal development, and also trying to understand the cues and what to be alert to in terms of, well, is this child acting outside of what may be considered normal? You know, and how do parents or teachers know what may be some of those cues? And I think that this is really something we've heard a lot about, as you mentioned, in the media lately, in conversations and so on. But there's a fine line, and so maybe you could shed a little light on, you know, when to know when to assess a child, and when not to overreact, or when to react.
I mean, I think I would lean. You know, it's always hard as a parent, being a parent, I recognize that as well. It's always hard to think that there may be anything that is causing your child pain or making it difficult, whether it's in school or at home. But I think often as adults we're inclined not to ask. And I would encourage people to ask. To ask friends, to ask family, to ask teachers, and to ask more than one person when you're feeling concerned. And that way it allows the opportunity to get multiple levels of input from both professionals who have contact with your children on a regular basis to supportive family members or neighbors, either in regard that it's in the ballpark of what kids do. And if you hear that from every single place you ask, that's reassuring. Or that, in fact, maybe you want to pursue it a little bit further. And if you're getting conflicting information or consistent information either way, I think better to err on the side of asking and checking than to err on the side of letting something go. Because just as in the first part of your show, it's very clear that there's so much that we can, as adults and as communities, put in place to be supportive to young children and to children as they move into the school age years and into adolescence, that all of those ages are critically important to who we become as adults and as people.
Now, you also mentioned that there are certain support systems, and you just kind of touched on it, but they're no longer available to families as they may have been in the past. And why is that, and what happens to young children as a result of that, the lack of those supports?
Well, I think if we know the kinds of things that help children to grow healthy, whether it's physically, psychologically, intellectually, emotionally, we know what those things are. And part of what's unfortunately been happening is that a lot of the mechanisms that help support families, and families are composed in many different ways now, what supports families in doing that has decreased dramatically. We don't have the continuity in communities that we had many years ago. We don't have the continuity in terms of extended family and friends. People are much more mobile. Communities change rapidly, whether they're large or small. We don't even have the same kind of continuity often in our school systems. It used to be years ago, the same teacher that your older brother had, the littlest one in the family has. So the kind of continuity that we all know is so supportive for children is not so available, and the kind of supports for families to do their jobs. We have two-parent working families if they're two parents. If we have a single parent, that parent is working long hours. There are many, many child care needs, both before school, after school, summer, full year, and not enough. There's more demand than what we have available right now. So all the things we know will help have been minimized. And I think part of what we've been talking about tonight are the many efforts that are happening across the country, in the state, in the city of Yonkers, in the county of Westchester, to try to ensure that families and communities can in fact have the structures that support their children.
And we also talked about some of the new research that's going on right now in early childhood development, and maybe you could tell us briefly some of the things that we've learned most recently about that development.
Well, I think we've learned a lot, everything from specifics in regarding brain development from infancy on through adolescence, and it continues well beyond early childhood and through adolescence and into early adulthood. We know very much that that the well-being of our children and our youth is dependent not just on what they learn in school. It's dependent on their emotional well-being, their intellectual well-being, their social well-being. All of those factors play into that. And we know that from pre-birth, children are in fact doing things we never thought they could do, and responding and taking in information from their environment in very complicated ways, and that speeds up. By the time a child is a toddler, it's speeded up so much it's hard to even see the different components. Babies are responding to all the cues on an adult's face. If you look frightened, they know. They may not have language yet, but they're reacting and taking in social cues. They feel how our bodies feel and respond to that. They are built to learn, to look in their environment and to integrate all the things that they see, they feel, they touch, they taste, and all of the research supports that that's what's happening. And that continues to happen in more and more complicated ways as we get older.
But does that mean that we should necessarily start educating our children sooner? When we hear things like this, people might think, oh, you know, maybe I'm not doing enough. Maybe I've got to get Johnny into, you know, preschool or something like that. Does that mean that we should be educating them sooner?
Well, I think if we all can accept the fact that growing for children involves many, many different components, then to emphasize one, like learning flashcards, for example, at an early age, is to neglect all the other complicated things that happens. I think we tend to think of education is when school starts, but we know that learning how to manage your relationship with people socially is so important to how we all grow to feel and how we think of ourselves as we become older, and it's equally as important for young children. That's the time when we begin to learn the rudiments of how to do that. How do you regulate yourself when you feel angry and frustrated? That is something that starts in infancy, from the time a baby screams and cries and gets a response. It's learning through that process. So I think there are fundamental things that we've always known and responded to, and I think part of what's happened is that some of the mechanisms that help support that and some of the expertise that's now available to help ensure that there should be no good reason to let any child not have access to what they need.
Parents who might be watching may be interested to know what they could do possibly to enrich their child's environment, and I think some of that will spill over when we talk with Kathy and Jennifer about their workshop in our new family center. But what are some of the kinds of things that a parent might do to enrich their child's environment without necessarily being academic about it?
I think the things that parents often are inclined to do spontaneously when they have adequate supports, for example, holding, talking, reading, touching, playing, inside, outside, time together, bedtime stories and rituals. I mean, they're very basic things that children utilize all of that. Bath time, diapering for young children, all of those are opportunities to interact and provide, for example, the contact with adults that we know is important, the nurturing that we know is important, the structure that we know is important. Bedtime rituals are a structure, so that children have all those opportunities to learn. It doesn't take a lot of toys, it doesn't take a lot of materials. It takes a minimal amount, but it takes more of us as adults than sometimes we've had opportunities to give.
Interactions at different levels in many different ways. Okay. Kathy and Jennifer will be co-leading a workshop entitled Recovering the Child It Takes a Village. Before we get into the issues of that workshop, I'd like to ask Kathy to tell us a bit about WJCS's new Family Center, and a lot of what's going on at the Family Center, I think, touches upon some of the things we've just talked about, and it's going to be run differently than other daycare centers. So that's the real exciting part about it, so I'd like you to tell our viewers something about that.
Great. Our Family Center in Southwest Yonkers will be family-centered, which is why we chose to call it the Family Center, and really try and move away from the daycare mentality. Historically, people think a daycare center is a drop-off place where you literally go and drop off your child and pretty much say, here, keep them safe, keep them fed, and I'll be back to pick them up. And historically, that's been done. We chose to call it the Family Center because our services, our philosophy, our mission, our curriculum wraps around the entire family. So it is family-centered, it is developmentally based, and it's multidisciplinary in its staffing. So our services will wrap around the entire family, though it will still be child-centered and family-centered. The core of the curriculum at the Family Center will be to help these children meet their developmental milestones. Not just keep them safe, not just feed them and change their diapers, but to truly help them meet their appropriate developmental agendas. Knowing that each child, though they need to meet certain milestones, has a different way of getting to their own agenda. And then staffing it with a multidisciplinary team of professionals from every discipline, from social work to child psychology backgrounds, early intervention specialists, preschool teachers, child development specialists, speech and language, and even a children's librarian. So it's really wonderful that we'll be able to, as Megan was talking about, provide an environment that offers so many different types of stimuli to the child. Also believing that children learn in very different ways. You know, we could all sit down with the same math problem and all get to the same bottom line, but you may do it visually. I may do it differently in my head. You know, Jen may have to have music going on in order to get her there. So, you know, kind of going on Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences, everybody learns in a different way. So we'll be offering the children that type of an environment.
You mentioned to me when we talked, and I found this very interesting as well, and you also touched upon that parents aren't just going to be coming along and leaving their child and saying, keep them safe, and thank you, I'll be back at 5:30 or what have you. How do you expect to have the parents involved in the daycare center, in the family center?
In the family center, well, our parents will be involved right from the beginning in the enrollment process. I mean, you know, with any parent, the paperwork required is insurmountable. So, I mean, they already have to have a pretty good organization going on, and dedication and motivation. We are going to be asking our parents, and actually requiring our parents, to spend 2 full days volunteering at the family center. So for working parents, that's a pretty big commitment. I mean, that's going to be, you know, taking time off. That's going to be a personal day for them, a vacation day for them. They can pick whatever 2 days they want. But we feel it's really important to have the parents not just embrace our philosophy and our mission, but to really become a part of it. And the more that they can relate to their child about what their child is doing during the day, the stronger not only will the bond be between the parent and child, but the better we can help bring our philosophy and our education into the home, so that it's a two-way street. It's not only happening at the family center. Being that the program is based for dealing with families that are in an at-risk environment, we have designed some very specific, innovative, creative initiatives to address and combat the painful realities of childhood poverty, poor nutrition, as Megan was talking about, also fragmented and defeated families that just do not have the support systems in place to give them what it is they need.
When you come upon a situation like that, I would imagine that you'll be calling upon, as we talked about in the first half, some of these integrated services and services that are out there in the community that many families don't know about. And so I'm wondering if you could tell us how the Family Center will help that particular family with a particular issue that will involve bringing in some other organizations, some other help.
Definitely. We feel that that's not only a unique component of our program, but a critical one as well. It's a type of almost one-stop shopping. A parent that has a child in the family center can have does have multiple stressors in their environment, whether it's education-based, whether it's with another sibling, whether it's with someone else in the family, whether it's with getting welfare assistance, food stamps, whatever it may be. We have the resources internally and externally to provide help to that family in almost, I can't think of a facet that we wouldn't be able to provide help to that family. It's almost that WJCS would be acting as a service coordinator. We find not only that families are more committed, more motivated, but absolutely have more positive, healthier, stable outcomes when you just really have one place to go to instead of running around from place to place. These lives are generally already fragmented, so to put more stressors and more fragmentation in their life is not going to give them any better outcomes.
I'd like to bring Jennifer a little bit into the conversation now. You are co-leading the workshop with Kathy, and I'm wondering what particular issues you're hoping to address at that workshop and how that fits into what we're talking about in terms of the Family Center and other agencies working together with families that need help.
I think obviously both Megan and Kathy are talking about families that are at risk and have multiple stressors upon them, and substance abuse happens to be one that is particularly prevalent among the families that we're talking about. So that's the angle that I hope to bring to the workshop that we'll be presenting. I think that coupled with the fragmentation that we're seeing in families and the lack of environmental and social and familial supports, a problem like substance abuse really can decimate whatever minimal, primitive coping and functional abilities a family has. So to be able to provide some insight into what the impact of substance abuse in a family is on a child, how to identify it, what to do if you identify it, and how to begin to kind of, intervene on that child's behalf.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about that. The question is what types of behavior, as you just suggested, might be cues that something like a substance abuse problem, maybe not necessarily a substance abuse problem, but one that may be indicating a substance abuse or other problem. What might those behaviors be in a child?
I think when we talked before, one of the things that was really striking is the issue of extremes in behavior. I think that we can see a range of possibilities, and as you said, not everything may point to substance abuse, but usually if you see extremes in a child's behavior, it's indicative of some problem somewhere, or some, not necessarily a problem, but an issue that may require attention. Typically, children of substance abusers in those extremes tend to be either extremely aggressive, extremely hostile, extremely angry, beyond the norm for their developmental or stage that they're in. Or the opposite extreme, very withdrawn, very isolated, very socially and emotionally deprived, lacking the skills to, or the comfort level to be able to engage with their peers, and more importantly with adults. Generally, children who respond to or engage with adults in either of those extreme ways tend to be acting out some repetition of the patterns that they experience at home. So that's their norm, that's what they know, that's what they learn, that's what they do. That may wave a red flag, but always to caution that nothing means everything. It's important, as Megan said, I believe, to ask and ask again and ask again and ask a lot of people, professionals and non-professionals, and just to get a feel for what's going on with your child in different environments and in different settings and with different people.
Well, I guess with the problem of substance abuse, that may be a little difficult for a parent to come across with that, because they're, or a caregiver, whoever it may be that is suffering from that type of abuse. So if Kathy in the Family Center or Megan or some of her social workers are looking at this kind of behavior and trying to make some inroads, let's just take the Family Center for instance, what might be the plan? What would be done to help?
If a child at the Family Center is kind of waving this red flag somewhere.
Yeah, and what steps might a scenario include?
I think certainly the fact that the Family Center staff will be multidisciplinary is critical and essential and very helpful, so that different disciplines can take a look at that from their own kind of expertise or bent. And I think then that Kathy and her staff's experience with, or relationship with, is what I should say, with the families that they work with will be critical, because they will be the first contact point, and hopefully somebody in that system, in their system, will be able to either intervene with the child or with the parent in terms of getting some more information and seeking out what the issues may be. Bottom line, when it comes to substance abuse, my personal and professional belief is that in order to be effective with children and with people in recovery, relationship is critical. Trust, communication, and so that a parent will not run away if they feel safe, and will not necessarily, they may not, you know, lay it all out for you real easily on the table first time you talk to them, but that sense of trust and rapport that they begin to establish will be critical in the family center's ability to be that first contact, and then certainly to reach out to professionals in the community that have the substance abuse experience.
And one of the things that when we were talking also is the nice thing, a real unique component of the family center as well, is that our parents will have already established that level of trust and relationship merely by enrolling their child in our program. So you've already got one of the most difficult steps already done. You have a foundation of a bond and a trust and a mutual relationship. And again, if a child is red flagging a behavior, since we're going to have such a close partnership with our families, we're going to see other flags somewhere else as well.
Well, how crucial is it, though, when you see a child who's exhibiting this type of behavior, that you enroll the family in making the situation better for that child?
I believe that when it's safe to do that and when it's realistic to do that, it's essential. It's critical. You know, in an ideal world, theory and all of that will teach you that family is essential to all kinds of recovery and change. And that would be the ideal. In some situations, it's not practical, it's not realistic, and it may not be safe. So I think you have to really judge. You really have to know the family, know the child, and make an educated decision about, you know, what the best way is to intervene. But in the ideal, a whole family's participation is really most effective and offers the most promise.
Okay. Now, how do clinicians like yourself, and yourself as well, Megan, become educated about the resources in the community so that you can bring together the services that a family or a child might need? Megan can
Well, I know one of the programs that we operate in the city of Yonkers in one of the schools, which is a school-based mental health program that's integrated with the educational system and with the medical clinic that's on site, which is wonderful, and involves parents a lot. It takes time, and it takes a willingness to reach out into the community and to gather whatever resources you don't have, and to look at the information that's out there. And so over the course of time, you really gather a lot. There are also a lot of resource books. There are a lot of alternative service providers who are a great resource. There are families who know about resources that a mental health provider wouldn't.
The informal networks
recreational
exist.
resources. So you do the formal and the informal, and you get a lot very quickly.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. We are out of time. Once again, thank you so much, Jennifer, Kathy, Megan, for joining us this evening. If you'd like more information about WJCS's new Family Center, please call Kathy Marquardt at 761-0600, extension 228. And if you're interested in participating in the CURS conference, you'll need to call John Alterman at 949-7699, extension 374, if you'd like to enroll there. Thank you for viewing.